And here come some attendees. But please, everyone who's just coming in, we're just waiting for attendees to arrive for the meeting today. We're going to give everyone a minute, and then we'll get started. Welcome.
Welcome.
We've also got the Q&A panel open now. Seeing a couple of things filtering on that, and that's great. We prefer that you use the Q&A panel if you have a question. And what we'll do is when Hud and I are working with Patrick here, our guest today, on delivering content, one of us will try and keep our eye on the panel. If we don't get to your question today, we will try and go through the transcript and make sure that we get back to anyone who reaches out for help.
I will mention that Jay has made with Patrick Anderson, has done some excellent tutorials on using InfoSparks, and those would be great tutorials to access on the YouTube channel.
Thanks. Yeah, Patrick Anderson and I have really dug into this tool quite a bit, and with HUD too, of course. And getting some of the changes ready for today's presentation was, it's been a really exciting month of August. And so I'm excited to get started. Should we get rolling, HUD?
Got a good amount of attendees. Statistically, it's always about half of what who signs up. But let me start off by welcoming everybody to our session today. I'm excited that all this has come together. You know, there's a feedback loop, whether you're aware of it or not, that happens in the MLS world and in the brokerage technology world and everywhere in general. But a little bit of how we got to where we are. Why are we even having this class? Why do we have a fantastic guest like Patrick Carlisle with us today? Well, he's with us today because about a month and a half ago, we had a couple of pieces of information that were starting to show up either in our MLS support inbox or on social channels, saying that there's something seems to be off with some of our statistics. That we're seeing properties that the days on market is not what we're seeing in the MLS. It just brought up a couple of different questions that initially we're like, well, you know, we assume everything is right and ready to go, but we really want to be listening, and that's really the key to what we're doing here today. Is you posted, you sent in emails, we reacted, we worked with partners to try to figure out what was going on, and now we've taken action. So part of that is not only taking in the tickets and the requests, but going to the statisticians at the MLS, our partners at InfoSparks or RPR or other statistical application that we use, and talking to experts in the field. And one of those experts was kind enough to actually workshop this with myself, Jay, Patrick Anderson, our data technician, and to find out, well, what's really going on. And then we were able to take that data back to InfoSparks and then have this discussion. And this is sort of the end of that, or not the end of the next beginning, I would say, is where we're now talking about coming together and listening and being part of the brokerage community, to the agent community, to the MLS community, working together to provide the right information for your buyers and sellers. And I just want to say, hey, Patrick, thanks for joining us. Nice to see you.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. Well, kind of how did we arrive here today? Just kind of talked about how the discussion started. But as we started digging into the facts, J. Pepper-Martens, what did we start to discover when we started pulling back the layers of this super powerful, super regional MLS system that we have in general?
Right. So we got a few of us together, and Patrick Carlisle was kind enough to join us at the time. It was sort of beginning of August. And we started digging into what values get averaged and what values get tucked into the medians when we're doing calculations, not only in InfoSparks, but also in the MLS itself. We had some really fantastic back and forth. We talked to the vendors. And what we discovered is that in some cases, in many cases, the nulls and zeros for values like square foot and days on market were being averaged in. So imagine you've got a line of values, right? Here's all the listings, and you've got all of these listings over here have a value in it for square footage, but these 19 have 0. Well, when you do an average on that range of numbers, you're averaging on all these zeros and it's skewing all your data one direction. So what we discovered, we did some filtering and we said, hey, what does it look like if I take the zeros out and what is the change? And so it was significant enough in enough places that we were like, okay, we've got to come up with a way to filter that data out when it's doing those calculations automatically so that it's not relying on agents to figure it out themselves. And I'm going to do an illustration here when we get into the MLS statistical sources that shows you that difference. One of the cool parts about figuring this out has been that we've been able to lean on our network of MLSs to say, hey, who else is averaging zeros in? Where else is this a problem? And we found out that in the SFAR, Berries, and MetroList systems, we were all doing something pretty similar, averaging in the zeros. So we're all going to fix this together in September when we make changes to our core data statistical reports inside the MLS. Very exciting stuff, and means we're not on an island. We're not making decisions on our own. We're actually working with our MLS network partners to fix this problem in more than one place. So that's not fixed yet, but it's going to be fixed in September. What we're going to show today is what we did fix in the InfoSparks tool. HUD's going to walk you through that a bit. And so we're going to look today at well, he's going to do some searches that show you how the data changed. I think you have a spreadsheet you're going to pull up, right? HUD, do you have some data you're going to?
I do, yeah. This is going to show us where we were, where we are today.
Cool. So just looking back on some foundational information that's important, just remember that the list date is a date when you sign an agreement. The on-market date is a date when you bring a listing onto the market as an active status. It's active and then contingent, and then it goes pending, and then it closes. Those are sort of the important things to remember. And in the MLS world, when we think about listing lifecycle, as most of you have seen this diagram now a few times, we'll often talk about active, hold, contingent being sort of the active world, and then we talk about pending and closed. You'll hear us talk about this more in September, and hopefully get to see a really cool panel where we're going to talk about this at Member Appreciation Day. The first weekend of October. I think it's like Monday, the October the 3rd.
Are you wanting to share right now?
So why don't I flip us over to the MLS, and do you want me to dig right into the MLS one, and I'll do quickly the illustration of the MLS?
Yes, of course. I thought you were sharing, so and I wanted to make sure that we all saw it. But
yeah, so let's jump over to the MLS. Let me know if you can see the MLS now. I'm going to go and share. I'm going to share screen too.
You got it.
Great. So just to show you how that zero can affect stats, let's take a look at a simple search. I'm just going to pull up a standard search, and I'm going to pull all the residentials. And of course, we only care about what's in the city. So I'm going to use the city field for that. I'm going to say San Francisco. And I want to look at all the closed data for a period. So looking back at our previous webinars we did on how to combine dates and statuses, you'll see I'm not going to check off the closed status. What I want instead is I want to look at all the data for a period where the data was closed. So I'm going to say, give me everything in Q1 of 2021. And what's my account? So my count is in the city, 1,642 closed listings in Q1 2021, last year. And what that is it's including a bunch of zeros. So if I ran my statistics now, I'm going to get values that include those. And so now some of my values on this report, they're going to be close. They're going to be really close, but they're not going to be 100% accurate. And the reason for that is a lot of the zeros and the nulls are being factored in. So what we're planning to do in September is release a fix that's going to prevent you from having to do this fix, where you put a 1 through as all the square feet, for example, and then you put that same period in. And make sure that I'm only looking at the city. Okay, I've gone from 1,600 listings down to 1,475. So now I've taken those 200 and some listings out that had 0 square feet being reported. And now when I run my statistics report, I'm running it on fewer listings, and I'm taking out those averages. So now my numbers are actually changing. And they're not changing a lot, but they're changing enough that it's not perfect. And if you were to look at stats coming out of your brokerage and stats coming out of the MLS, and if people are filtering them differently, you'd get different numbers. And we don't want you to have that experience where you're not sure which numbers are true or real. So right now we know that the square feet values are being averaged in and the zero DOMs are being averaged in, and we're going to fix that in September to take it out of the MLS. But thankfully, we've already been able to work with one of our partners on getting this corrected in InfoSparks. And so why don't we do the example in InfoSparks HUD, and then let's get Patrick's input on how he uses it.
Great. Got to use that unmute button. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Make sure you guys can see everything. And can you see that desktop?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So this is the InfoSparks program. And as Jay has mentioned, we frame this as the statistical analysis you can do in the MLS, and that is the true data set versus these views. InfoSparks is a view of the data. There's another view of the data versus what you have coming out of the MLS. And the fact of the matter, we've been able to remove the zero and also focus on, in terms of the days on market or month supply of inventory, focusing on being able to focus on the listing date as opposed to the, the on market date as opposed to the listing date. So I'm looking at San Francisco here. I'm looking at new listings, I'm looking at month supply and active listings. And so what I'm going to get on active listings and new listings is I'm going to an accurate picture of the data I'm looking for. And it's crunching the numbers as we speak. This might be demo-itis at the moment that I'm experiencing.
Oh, I think it'll be okay. It usually crunches the numbers pretty quick. There you go.
Okay, I'll go back to the new listings. So this is showing in the month of March 2022, we've got 958 and 783 as it starts to trend down. Now, the monthly supply is good to look at, but if you want to smooth these numbers out, you want to look at the rolling 3 months and even rolling 6 months. That gives you more of a smoother, not as aggressive take on it. But there's your monthly, and that's showing the differences that we're seeing. In this spreadsheet, we'll show an interesting piece of data that we showed the previous median days on market. We are seeing numbers that you see in this left-hand list. And as we made the adjustment, we're now seeing those numbers increasingly move in the direction that we're expecting. The thing to keep in mind is that as we make that change, the change we've made, that there will be a slight increase in the days on market, but it is a realistic interpretation of that data and those numbers, a more accurate interpretation, I should say. We're also seeing that on the mean as well. This spreadsheet data we'll put together, and that'll be part of the video that we send out, so you can take a look at that. But the important thing to keep in mind with the InfoSparks data is we've done a couple things. We've adjusted that zero percentage, that 0 point that Jay has mentioned, and we've also are paying attention to the on-market date as opposed to the listing date.
And that's really the material change that we've figured out with discussion. So Patrick, why don't you tell us, how that what you were doing with InfoSparks and how did that come to your attention, and then how did you, where do we go from there?
Yeah, great, thank you. So first of all, I should say that the list date on market date sounds kind of technical, but it's a very big issue when we're looking at inventory, because as agents we'll constantly take listings in August that we'll put on the market in September. If it's using the listing signing date, it considers those listings as active in August instead of September. And what we found, and the reason I originally raised the issue, is because I was looking in InfoSparks, and by the way, I use InfoSparks every day. I've got InfoSparks open all day long.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I use dozens of data sources, but my two main ones are one, actual straight from MLS data using the statistics program there, which is quite powerful. And then InfoSparks, because InfoSparks allows me to massage the data in a number of ways that allow me to view and depict trends. Our clients are mostly interested in trends, okay, because they don't know at any given time whether 15 days is low or 28 days is high, or this price is low or this price is high. They need to see a progression of data over a time period to see, is the market going up? Is demand going up? Are sales going down for some reason? And so forth and so on. And that's where InfoSparks comes into play. On the active listings itself, the problem with the on-market date versus the date the listing was signed was sometimes adding 500 to 700 listings onto the wrong month. And that, needless to say, really screws up the active listing count, and then it affects the month supply of inventory and so forth.
What's interesting, if I could just jump in for a second, is a lot of the inventory in San Francisco does do a sort of a tour of duty through the coming soon status. And so the implementation, the way it was sort of capturing coming soon data, aggregating it in, which wasn't appropriate. We know that we in San Francisco still want to treat the coming soon period as kind of an off-market, pre-market status. So by moving us to the on-market date, we're getting real picture now of what the on-market, when it's marketed outside the MLS, marketed to on portals. That's what we really wanted to help get to the bottom of, and capture that correct information. So just a note on why that decision was made. The other thing that's cool about it, though, was even though the numbers were inflated, the trend lines were right. So it didn't look out of whack, but the data points themselves were high. And so now we've corrected the data points. But interestingly, the trend lines still reflect our expectations. And we discovered that the trend lines themselves have adjusted down, but they still look similar. We're seeing the same seasonal trends. And so the data, even though it was inflated, was still painting an interesting picture to your point about trends.
Yeah. So, a lot of agents highlight, year-over-year monthly data, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's a very, very narrow view of what's going on in the market, and especially, comparing what happened in July 2022 to July 2021. Yes, it's an interesting data point, but only as part of a more comprehensive picture of what's going on.
Mm.
One of the things we have to remember is San Francisco is actually a very small real estate market, especially our house dynamic. We have months in San Francisco where there are only 100 house sales in a given month, 100 house sales over 70 odd neighborhoods. Well, when you have so few sales in so many different micro markets, things like median sales prices and other statistics can get blown out of whack simply because a couple sales fell this way instead of that way. So what InfoSparks allows us to do is, as HUD pointed out, you can do 3-month rolling data or 6-month rolling data. I use monthly data every now and then. I use it now because the market has been changing so dramatically in the last few months. So it's important to be able to see those change month by month. But generally speaking, I'll use 3-month rolling data or more because I'm just getting more data. More data gives us more reliability.
Does that give you more of a, and that was actually a question that Laura brought up, the times when to use rolling month data versus the single month. And I think you're illustrating that. It's if you want a longer trend,
Right.
So you can try to see what's coming around the bend, or at least see what's happened in the quarter before you. Do you have anything else to add to that in terms of this question from Laura? The question is, I'd like to understand the rolling month. What is rolling month data telling us versus the monthly data? Is there any?
Okay, good. So first of all, we should define what rolling month actually does. So a 3-month rolling data means that each data point includes not only the month we're looking at, but the previous 2 months. So it smooths out the changes over time. 6-month rolling data is literally taking July all the way back to February data in that one data point. And if you go to 12-month rolling data, you actually delete seasonality from the chart completely, and you don't get all the ups and downs because we have a great amount of seasonality in all the real estate markets in the Bay Area.
So when you're having a conversation with your buyer or seller about trends, I wonder, and this is just a question I have, if I want to show a market that is just, this is how the market is going to go, and it's sort of its expected behavior, seems like the 3-month curve gives a little bit more of a, it's not as much of a dramatic conversation is maybe what I'm trying to say. Would that be accurate?
Yeah. Well, 3 months is good because you're bringing in a much greater amount of data that is being calculated, but it doesn't delete seasonality from the chart. You can still see the flow. The fact of the matter is that the market typically, volume and prices typically climbs through spring. It typically slows down in summer. In San Francisco, it spikes back up in September and October for the short autumn selling season, and then it plunges generally in midwinter. As you can see, the very bottom of this chart you see is around December, January. Seasonality is a subject that is of great interest to our clients, especially our sellers, who are constantly saying, when should I put my home on the market?
Exactly.
When is the
Labor Day is right around the corner, and we know that is one of those the time when people are always talking about listing their property post Labor Day.
Yeah, if we look at new listings, for example, September is typically the single month of the year with the greatest number of new listings. Now, this is a 3-month rolling data, so it may not quite show the spike as big as it would be if it was just 1 month. But that's an
Boom.
important, yeah, boom. So you see, now spring is our greatest season for activity and new listings, but September is that very dramatic spike, and that fuels, the entire autumn selling season, which comes to a halt in about mid-November.
And you can see here,
I know.
yeah,
It's a roller coaster.
exactly. What I love about this is just bang, where are the spikes? What month does that happen to be? You can see September. Even in 2020 and 2021, which I think we can all agree are very bizarre years, you're still seeing that those trends are there. And to shift to the 3-month rolling, you can see that the same sort of patterns are still there. They're just smoothing out the M pattern, because now we're looking at quarterly data. We space it out to 6 months. Okay, now we're losing that quarterly seasonal variation that Patrick was talking about. And there it is. There's our year average. And you can see that now we're just seeing, general trends. How many new listings were there? Well, they picked up again through 2020, and then they gradually plateaued and went down again in 2021. You can see we're headed towards more normal new inventory. You can see the line is just curving down now. So those longer views really give you the sense of the overall trend. Whereas to the point exactly, I can see the exact data points here.
Yeah. So the 12-month, I say my preferences is this or that, but really my preferences all depend on what sort of analysis I'm doing, because what I try to do is I try to look at the market in as many angles as possible. Because if something is going on broadly in the market, it should be showing up across indicators, not just one place here and the opposite there. One of the great things about the 12-month rolling data, for example. So go to 12-month rolling data. Yeah, great. Now, could you do it so it goes back to the maximum time period? Yeah. So this is fantastic data. It doesn't tell us that much about what's going on today, but it gives us this broad long-term view as to what happens in the market. And besides seasonality being important, our clients are constantly wanting this long-term view of how markets work, not just how July 2022 compares to July 2021. So looking at this chart, I think it's very fascinating is, last year, or there's constantly been this discussion about low inventory. And what a lot of people believed that to mean, and a lot of agents to mean, is that people weren't selling their homes, and that's why inventory was low. That could not be farther from the truth. Here's a chart of new listings. If you can see, in 2021, it was higher than any time going back
2006
to 2007.
Exactly.
Inventory wasn't low because people weren't selling their homes. Inventory was low because the homes were selling so quickly that the inventory on any given day was very, very low.
Really, the days on market that was so short, right? And
days on market
are selling. To me, when I looked at this as a layman looking at statistics, it tells me real estate is cyclical, the market's cyclical, and you can have a little bit of rest assured a little bit that the trends come and go. And so
why don't we click on sales price now on this long-term view? So, so first of all, I'll also say I personally never use average sales prices because they can often get blown out of whack. You're looking at Pacific Heights and one home sells for $30 million, but there was only 20 sales. Well, that pulls the median sales price up by $1.5 million because of that one sale. I like medians because they're much more stable. But here's a very long-term view going back to 2005 of what has happened in median sales prices. So you can see how, the market hit a high in 2007, 2008. Then came the financial market crash, the foreclosure crisis, and then, of course, the huge high-tech boom and employment recovery that we saw, and then ultimately the pandemic boom that we saw over the last 2 years. So this is, this, by the way, eliminates seasonality because it's 12 months rolling. If we went to 3 months, it's going to be a lot more up and down. But now you see how every year, I mean, within every year, prices go up and down by season. And by the way, this isn't necessarily related to fair market value. There are a lot of factors behind median sales prices. For example, the luxury home market is even more seasonal than the general market. So luxury home sales have a tendency to soar during the spring. Well, that's one of the factors that pulls median sales prices up. It's not the only factor. Buyer demand is certainly a major factor, but the fact that a greater percentage of luxury homes are selling also pulls up the price. So anyway, there's a lot of different ways to use InfoSparks. It's very easy, it's very intuitive, but like anything, you have to learn how to use it. So I would suggest looking at one of Jay and Patrick's webinars. Also look at the FAQ instructions, because it's very, very powerful program. I think it's the best market analytics program out there. And I can get a question, or I have a question, and I can be on InfoSparks and pull an analysis literally in seconds and answer my question. So I really highly recommend that you understand the powerful tool that is at your disposal here through SFAR. And I'll also point out that SFAR is the only MLS association in the whole Bay Area that offers InfoSparks. So my hat's off to Jay and HUD and the team for making that happen.
Appreciate that a lot. And what's cool about InfoSparks is it's really insanely powerful and can do all this through a pretty elementary user interface.
I was going to say, if someone like me can click on a couple of things, I'm just a monkey that can make things happen, that you're able to pull real information and easy to digest. And I was wondering, when you're telling this story about long-term market trends, most of the time the buyers or the seller's agents, the quick question is my house priced appropriately? Do I need to be, what are the average days on market? What am I concerned about? Because days on market is such a thing in San Francisco. It's not a thing as much elsewhere. So we spend a lot of time focused on that here. I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. In the last 20 years I've been in the business, it just seems to be a strong conversational point for sellers. So we do have other tools that are out there for you to not only be able to talk about statistics, but also to run sellers reports. And we're always thinking about having more property heavy data. One of the, do we have the RPR available for us to?
Yeah, why don't I pull that up?
Yeah, and while you're bringing it up, what RPR is a free tool to you as an association member. It's an NAR tool that allows you to not only do things like run neighborhood reports and buyers and sellers reports, but also run farming. You can actually do some farming. There's farming tools built into here so that you can run labels and be able to send off for mailers, or you can use the title company, which is always a great use of time. But Jay, I think you're going to show one of our reports and get an idea of what you can do in addition to InfoSparks.
Yeah, what's great about the RPR product is another one that said, hey, we understand zip codes don't make sense to you, but you have selling areas that are really hyper important. And that's true, right? We have our sub-districts and districts that really make sense to us, and we're so used to using them. So we asked RPR to implement Noe Valley, for example. So when I go and want to run a market activity report, I can choose one of our neighborhoods, and I could choose to look at the sample that RPR provides. And what's interesting about this is when you run these reports in RPR, you choose what you want to include in the report, you run the report, and then you can go do other stuff. It's busy working. So up here, it's generating the report. It's got this fancy thing. It's pulling data in. So you can go do other stuff. You could go back to the MLS and keep working on whatever you're doing. You could go back to InfoSparks and keep doing some analysis, knowing that RPR will send you this report once it's done. So do go have a look at the reports that are available here. There's another good source of statistical information available to you.
And everything we're showing, everybody on the call belongs to different brokerages, and we fully understand that your broker has some reporting tools or some other applications that are available to you because of your association with the brokerage. We're here to show you that all these free tools are available to you from the MLS, and we're able to bring some of our own market analysis along with our partners here. With that, I'll pass it back to Jay to look at some AI and other types of fun research that's out there.
So what is our data being used for, right? We have these stats that we can pull, and I think we've articulated some pretty fascinating types of analysis that you should be doing to understand your market and look at trends. But other companies are doing some really cool stuff too. Zillow has an entire department of their company, a division that's just dedicated to machine learning, AI, and doing research. And you can access this stuff. This is just under, where is it? So if you go to Zillow.com, it's under Tech, AI, and ML. And they in here are using the data to look at, tapping into the text of your listing. Does it matter what you say in your description? Using a guided search. How do I do personalized searches? What are the best ways to refine it to show my clients exactly what they want? So there's a lot of cool stuff that's being done statistically with the data that you can use. And many of these things are available for you to use for free. This stuff that you can pull off of Zillow's website, absolutely no cost to you. Oh, what was that? That was my report from RPR being finished. So if you heard that doorbell chime, I can go and download that report, which maybe I'll do in the background. And then another one that's really cool is Realtor.com has this entire wing again that just does research. So if you want to go look at what Realtor.com is studying based on the market data, you can go to Realtor.com/research, and it'll take you to this page where you can see their market outlooks. You can see that they do local market trend reports, and also try to determine which markets in America are the hottest, and we often feature on that list. So lots of cool stuff happening out there that's all related to market statistics. And not only should you dig into your local market stats, which is absolutely where you should focus, but don't be afraid to look at what does that data mean across the country? What do these other reports tell you? But just for fun, let's go and have a look at that downloaded report. I wonder what we got here. Let's take a look at that.
And as we're getting the full picture here, that's the whole idea, is that become to your comfort level a data technician as much as you can, like understanding data, even if it's at a macro level, just so that you can feel comfortable with explaining the different data points that are out there. Also, rely on your resources. You have resources at your brokerage. You have your sales meetings, and your stats that go out either weekly or monthly by your sales managers. Use those, but ultimately a lot of that is coming from the MLS data. So seeing that whole picture, we're trying to paint the whole picture here so you can see where it all comes from, and then you're going to find out what works the best for you and your particular clients. Because what system what you use is not going to work for every client. I mean, I think we can we all like different apps for different reasons, right?
Exactly. And we want to let agents choose the apps they want to use, which is why you can go to the RPR one if you want. You can go to the Realtor.com and look at their market stats if you'd like. We want to encourage you to use the things that work for you. Here happens to be that report I pulled from RPR. You can see it's focused on one of our neighborhoods. And of course, it's going to show you some change over last month, change over the last 3 months. So this is building essentially that rolling average that we've just explained to you. The report builds that in. And this is an extensive report, so I'm not going to go through it with every page, but I encourage you to pull one, have a look at it, and think about what that means to maybe your seller.
And the last point I'll say is that InfoSparks was first. We are now working with all of our data partners now that we've discovered some improvement areas, and we're going to be talking to them. And we have the opportunity now. We've seen success with InfoSparks, and now we have RPR broker metrics. There's other tools that are out there that receive our data that not only realtors but for brokers rely on. So we're continuing to strengthen those relationships and do the same thing essentially. We have a few questions that came through, but I think we're rounding out towards the end of the session. Yeah, Jay?
I think so. Why don't we get any final comments from our guests today?
Well, let's see. A couple of things. First of all, so as I mentioned, I use probably dozens of data sources because I look at macroeconomics and various. I do use Realtor.com raw data and so forth and so on. One thing to be aware of is, to me, the fundamental basis of the data I use is MLS. If I'm in a program, one of the things why I don't use just automatically use computer generated data is these programs do have glitches. Things go wrong and the data gets screwy. And one of the things I do is I'm constantly vetting the data for reasonableness, i.e., I pull this data and I go, well, wait a second, does that seem reasonable? So InfoSparks had a glitch, last month for a week or two with Marin data. I don't know what the glitch is. We live in a technological world. There are glitches. There are glitches right in the middle of my head. But I pulled the Marin data and go, well, no, I don't think sales dropped 79% year over year, maybe 30 to 40%, not 79%.
Right.
So I went to MLS and I pulled the Marin sales data and to compare it. And that was one of the reasons that led me to then connect up with Jay and HUD and Patrick Anderson saying, this doesn't look right. Can you connect up with InfoSparks? So it's important that you don't abdicate the reasonableness, the assessment of data to any program. You're looking at it, you're looking for reasonableness, you're looking for trends that make sense. If something is wait a second, I don't think prices jumped 50% year over year. There's probably something wrong and you have to step back.
I haven't seen any additional questions, so
I think we're good.
I think we're good. Patrick, we look forward to seeing you again.
Always nice to see my old friends, both of you who I've known for quite a while now, and to talk at least in some way to so many other old friends who I've worked with in the market for many years.
Well, fantastic, and we're getting great feedback in the chat as well. So, well, we're going to invite you back. So hopefully you'll join us for another session at some point.
I'll believe it when I see it.
We'll see how this recording goes, right?
Yeah. All right.
Well,
All right,
everyone
I'll see you
take
guys.
care and please have a wonderful September.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.